Ryan.
Today we are learning basketball with Tim. You might know him as Cranjis McBasketball, aka the founder of the BBall Index, aka the co-host of Lakers Exceptionalism with Tom Zayas. Shout out to BBall Index right off the top. Loved working with y'all back in the day, making some data viz back with Jacob Goldstein in house and PIPM, and now you got Krishna Narsu with LeBron creating these really impressive impact metrics that are able to do the best possible job to put all the different stats into one overall metric to kind of show the impact that players bring within their roles. And it was always a super interesting project back then and remains to this day to kind of visualize that and try to make it as easily understandable for what were kind of new concepts at the time and still very relevant today. So excited. We got to give a shout out to B-Ball Index and, the team right off the top, but we're excited to dive into all things Lakers and I heard they got some new guy in town, so excited to kind of break down a little bit of what that could look like. But first off, how you doing today, Tim?
Yeah, Ryan, happy to be here. We got a new guy, Luka, right? Luka Doncic, he's coming to town. Mark Williams as well. A couple beloved Lakers on the way out. But yeah, it's an exciting time in Lakerland, and the hate will keep coming, and it only makes us stronger. We continue to get lucky with kind of this superstar to superstar transition. Very excited, really pumped to see Luka finally play upcoming sometime soon, maybe Monday. But that's kind of really shaken up my week, and it's hard to just not be thinking about it at all times because he is such a talent, and it'll be fun to see him play with like LeBron freaking James.
I mean, just unreal to think about it. The name of the podcast really holding its own this week. Lakers Exceptionalism, as you get one of the best offensive scoring creator engines, I don't know, of the generation, just handed to you on a silver platter. Like, what's it like being a Lakers fan covering the Lakers when some of the best players around the league, whether it's other teams giving up on them or moving on, why do they keep ending up over in LA with y'all?
Really not sure. I have no idea how this trade came about. It seems to have been a mixture of luck and bad decision making, and I'll take it. As a content creator, I have lived through like one of the only dark ages in the Lakers' existence, which has been like the late Kobe and post Kobe era until LeBron came over and the team wasn't good. The coaching wasn't good. As an X's and O's guy, it was just a dreadful time to watch and break down the team and try to convince these fans, hey, it can be better. I promise, you can run plays. The players aren't too young to run plays. And it took until like the last coaching staff to have like an actual playbook. And this coaching staff has done some fun things. So, no one has any sympathy for me because, 5, 6, 7 years is not a long time in the NBA history to, be down bad. But we went through it a little bit, had some fun with tanking, and hopefully won't be back to that anytime soon. I don't really know what to say. I'm just happy to be along for the ride.
Man, yeah, no doubt. They're skipping right over the tanking waters for the next round. The full trade was Lakers get Luka, of course, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris. The Mavericks land Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first round pick. Just one little pick for Luka. I mean, what else do you need? But the resulting roster in Dallas as well is pretty interesting. The defense is going to be there. I'm interested to see how that 2-man game looks with Kyrie and Anthony Davis, who are having some of the best seasons of their career. But we're here to talk about the Lakers, and before we really dive in to Luka and the Lakers, I wanted to hit on a few of the big projects that you work on, and starting with the podcast, Lakers Exceptionalism. What's it been like, kind of starting a podcast, hosting a podcast, and covering the Lakers, and any advice for anyone trying to kind of carve out a similar lane in that field?
Yeah, it's been fun. And I guess I've been lucky to have been a fan of a team that has a big fan base. And so there's such an ecosystem of content creators with just the Lakers Twitter sphere, where there are cap people, there are real good film people, there are former coaches, current coaches, there's great, CBA folks, plenty of drama and, people enjoying the game in so many different ways. finding what our niche was really important to Tom and me. And I was transitioning over from having done some work in a film room, running a data team at the college level. And so I had a little bit of expertise I was able to bring to the table. And what our podcast sounded like way, way back then compared to now is very different. I remember the first podcast I ever hosted was as like a guest host on the Laker Film Room pod. And, repeatedly throughout it, I would kind of get lost and be like, oh, I'm listening to this podcast instead of hosting it. And they'd have to be like, hey, Tim, what's next? And it's just, a very surreal experience for me. Getting better as a communicator, I think, has been a really good thing. You just grow and grow, listening back to it to understand, am I saying a lot? Am I using the same phrases over and over again? Things like that, just from a communication side, especially for, picking a niche that's as dumb to do in podcast format as diagramming X's and O's and talking numbers. Not the best things to do with the auditory medium. And so I think that's taken some extra work to figure out a way where it's entertaining and not just me sitting there, rambling off numbers. So that's certainly, there's been growth, and, the two of us, we provide feedback and coaching. And, when you put something up publicly, you're going to get some good feedback, some constructive feedback, and trying to sort through what's in good faith versus just people hating on it is important. But just keep turning along, getting, guesting on other pods, getting other people to guest on yours is a good way to grow the brand. And at the end of the day, you're just kind of putting some public work out there, and you have to be able to know that you've not cut the corners, you've put in the work, you can be proud of it. Not everything's going to hit. We do some videos, some pods that I think are phenomenal, and then nobody cares about. And then other things where we're like, yeah, whatever. We didn't prep all that much, not a great topic, and then people love it. So you never really know. There are going to be ups and downs, but I think just enjoying the work, enjoying the process, enjoying all of the prep work. There might be a 1 hour pod. You might do 4 hours of film prep just to prep for that 1 hour, and then working on an agenda and all sorts of different things. So, and then all the work afterwards that I don't touch with the editing and whatnot. There's a lot that goes into it. And so enjoying that work instead of doing it just, seeking money or seeking notoriety, super important. And you meet a lot of great people along the way. I'm really lucky to have met a lot of awesome people on the Laker side and more generally. And for me, and we'll talk more about BBall Index later, but having public work and private work has been interesting because they seem to feed into each other. A lot of our best consulting work has been teams and agents saying, hey, I'm familiar with you, or I'm familiar with the team, BBall Index, the Twitter account. Therefore, you've shown your work. I trust it. We want to consult. And then the more we do of that, I think it's easier to get people to listen to what I have to say when I can say, hey, you know what? We've got 18 front offices using our things or things like that. So it's ever evolving, always a journey. And I'm just happy to, be able to spend time each week talking to one of my best friends about basketball.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way to do it. A popular theme of advice seems to be podcasts or do radio, which back in the day with people you want to talk to, like your friends, and makes it a lot easier to just kind of talk hoops and keep it casual while still informative and not feel like a forced conversation or something like that. So, good advice there. And, speaking of BBall Index, I'd love to dive into that a little bit. What kind of led in your basketball background to starting BBall Index in the first place, and then teaming up with Jacob with PIPM and Krishna with the LeBron metric, and I believe as well like some sort of partnership with Fanspo and with the trade machine as well. So what's that been working like, and kind of that full path for you of starting that BBall Index company, and also on how like you mentioned, how you're able to use it inside the industry and like work with teams, work with players, work with agents compared to, presenting it to the public as something of like another website, a website tool for analytic tools to kind of find more stats and find different metrics that, can be helpful for the public side and the private side, like you mentioned.
Yeah, they're very different worlds. The kinds of stuff that you on the inside of a team trying to win games throughout the course of the season, there's a whole bunch of stats that you're never going to look at because it doesn't matter. Like you're not looking at, if you're on a coaching staff, you're not looking at LeBron, you're not looking at EPM, you're not looking at PIPM. You're worried about more granular specific things to help you with your scouting and optimizing your roster. And so there was a gap that I saw in what was publicly available that we tried to fill with some of the offerings put together. I think I have enough basketball knowledge and enough data knowledge to be a good in between for the two. And I try to, I think people see that with my content, the X's and O's meshing with the data and understanding roles and things like that. Coding is not my strong suit nearly as much as the great people I work with. And so putting together the website was an effort that Jacob Goldstein, who's now with the Wizards, and I did. And the vision there was, we just want a website that can host some of the good stuff we're already working on. We have a lot in Google spreadsheets. Let's get it like actually on a web page. And then once we did that, we realized, hey, there's something here people might be willing to pay for with the data viz and the tools. It's not just like a rip off database of publicly available stuff. It's us taking ingredients and coming up with new things or coming up with different ways to visualize stuff. And that, we just kind of built, and over time things have evolved. We've tried some things out, realized, it's not sustainable, or this isn't the kind of business we want to be in with like selling gambling picks, stuff like that. Even though it was working decently, it didn't feel great when when a pick doesn't go well for people to be super angry about it. And don't generally want to encourage people to be gambling, because having been doing that a little bit, like, you're not going to win unless you've got some sort of real edge. And so that's something we dabbled in and then got away from. But yeah, just growing over time, it's been a good way to bring smart people in, pay them well to spend some of their time working on cool stuff and showcasing their skill sets. And then it seems like once a year we have somebody poached away from us to NBA teams, WNBA, college, Major League Baseball, the National Football League. And so we've got some interesting connections in different places from people who came, worked for us, built some awesome stuff, and then got awesome opportunities from it. So I love to see that personal growth and professional development for my team. And it's just a great recruiting tool for us, bringing in great new talent with them able to see, here are the half dozen people over the past 5 years that are now working full time in sports. Because they did some cool work for us. And I'm not here to exploit you. I'm not here to, make you work a bunch of hours for free. Like, I'm going to pay you too, because we have an actual product to sell. And so I've been able to try to manage it that way, try to keep growing. And so that's what the public side has looked like. Privately, consulting I think it's always a little bit up and down in terms of when stuff is needed, how quickly it's needed, how many clients you have. You have to slowly build trust. And I think you build trust through consistency, the brand awareness, having our stuff actually be good. And, you can put anything together, but if it's no good and people can tell it's no good, they're not going to pay for it. And full-time, NBA teams, they have full-time data staffs. And so they can do what we can do. It's more so, I think, agents that don't have a full-time data staff that can leverage us to help bring them to an even, a level playing field at the bargaining table when it comes to extensions, placing free agents, stuff like that. Like, we've worked in facilitating trades, max contracts, contract extensions. And so it's been interesting being on the back end and seeing how that works and being able to add value there and, help players make the most of, their careers through just showcasing what their skill sets and what they're able to do the best. Because teams are shrewd. They don't want to pay you more money than they need to. And so equipping those players and those agents is a really helpful thing. And so that's been a lot of fun as well. And the more those two sides have grown, the more there's synergy between them. And, seeing our stuff referenced on ESPN or team broadcasts is really cool. And getting a call and having Zoom meetings with GMs and coaches, that's really neat. And I just love being around the game. I love contributing to the game. And I feel like I'm learning every day and get to work with great people. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine that that's got to feel great to see your team thriving, in-house, and then, keep moving around the league, around the industry, and be able to learn something while they're there, and put out something nice, a real product that, has value for just about every side that you just mentioned. I mean, pretty much anyone can get something out of, learning a little bit more about a player or a team, using these stats, using these tools, and that's why it, continues to grow. So, would you say you have any kind of what your goals are with the BBall Index going forward as well? And is it, you hit on a lot of what you've already been able to accomplish with it, and is there an end goal in mind, or just continue to provide this service for the public side and all the people you talk to behind the scenes?
Yeah, I'd say there's. I guess there's an angle at mine. We certainly have some vision and plans to continue expanding, continue growing the team, growing these, casual things into part-time things and part-time to full-time. We want to continue increasing our market share, and I think a big piece of that has been, and you alluded to it earlier, the partnership that we're starting with Fanspo soon. We're just about at the goal line to a site transition. I think for anyone who's seen our stuff, used our stuff, we've got good math. I think where we've been a little behind is the technology and making sure we've got an awesome website that's easy to navigate, has good tools, pages that load quickly, things like that. And so taking our content and plugging it into an organization and a business, a website that has excellent software development skills, and I guess needed some content to plug into the site beyond just the trade machine. We found a really good partnership with Zach and the team over at Fanspo. So folks who like our stuff, folks who were using our, Google spreadsheets back in the day, you're seeing already, if you're a current user or if you're just seeing the marketing, and if you're a potential future user of BBall Index, you're going to see a much more like professionally polished up product, and one that I feel more proud of, because you can have great math, but if it doesn't look good, you're not going to be able to get as much trust. And we've seen bad math that looks good gain traction. I'd like to have some good traction with the good math as well. So I don't want our presentation to hold back what's going on. And so that's a big goal of what we have. So that transition has been years in the making. Since 2021, I have Google Doc notes on what it would take to transition. And so there's been a lot of project management, tons and tons of writing code. I think we have like 800,000 lines of code that have been written to help transfer everything over, to automate everything, and really professionalize what we're doing. Beyond that, I have plans to expand what we're offering into some like X's and O's, ball screens 101, post help 101, pick and roll defense or rotational defense, just kind of creating some interactive courses that are very affordable. Anyone can use. You can go through, learn the content, see the clips, the diagrams, the write-ups, go through quizzes on the site itself, earn badges for your performance on the quizzes, and then be able to kind of just grow your knowledge in the game. We've already begun developing the curriculum for that, employing together concepts, organizing things, grabbing clips. And so that's going to be, I think, a big push this next 12 months to try to add more and make Fanspo and BBall Index a place for people to go, not just to make some trades or look at some data, but also grow their game and grow their knowledge of the game, and do so in a way where we're not charging a $200 to, learn some X's and O's stuff. I think that's right now there's a big gap and a big market inefficiency with that. And that's an area that I'd like to grow things. And there's probably opportunity there as well when it comes to developing data acumen, data literacy. And that's something we plan to explore as well.
Super interesting, and a lot of tools that could really help some people learn something. So, can't wait to hear more about that, and might have to take a little course myself, brush up on
Yeah, we can hook you up. We can
on
hook
the
you up
old
for sure.
skills. Yeah, no doubt. I appreciate it. And so, we might as well dive into what I'm sure some of the listeners here are waiting to hear is your thoughts on this Lakers offense with Luka freaking Doncic in town. And I would love to kind of dive into a little bit of, I don't want to throw the entire season out of the way of what's happened so far, but it almost feels like it's a whole new team. So some of it's thrown out. But what I thought would be interesting is to talk to you about some plays that JJ Redick has run this year that you think could really be advantages for Luka and Mark Williams and LeBron, of course. And, off the top of my head, something like a double drag or a horns, the base sets there comes to mind because of just everything that Luka and LeBron bring to the table as playmakers, pick and roll guys, LeBron rolling or popping, and then Mark Williams like this big lob threat. That's like a base sets that I imagine this is going to be a pick and roll heavy offense. So I was wondering if you thought anything different, if you think it might be more set plays here and there, or more of maybe flow within certain schemes. Maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 base things that they run everything out of. Like I was wondering where your head's at with the offense of what the possibilities are, because obviously they feel kind of endless when you have offensive talents as cerebral as Luka and LeBron on the same team.
Yeah, when we talk about how to use Luka best or what you can run with Luka, the answer is just about everything. And so that's why it's almost a hard question to answer. I think what the team has run so far this season fits in well with Luka. There is a lot of pick and roll offense. He has a nice post game to him, and I think just him, LeBron, Williams, Austin Reeves potentially on the court together, and then a DFS or somebody like that. You're going to have, someone's probably going to have a post mismatch, and being able to operate from the perimeter, from the inside, with ball screens, with off ball screens, like there's a lot that the team can do. Where I've seen the offensive scheme struggle a little bit this season is how well they are playing the like almost Pokemon game or rock, paper, scissors when it comes to, all right, you're running drop coverage. We're going to run plays that beat drop coverage. Oh, you're running, you're going to hard hedge. We're going to run plays that beat hard hedging. And where they've struggled specifically is targeting drop coverage. They've run a lot of double drag, a lot of delay Chicago, a lot of concepts that like you can score from attacking drop, but it's not necessarily like built to beat that. And I expect the team just to play drop coverage or face drop coverage less with Luka out there, which is part of a solution. And then his ability to hit pull up threes, which actually this season he's only hit 30% of them, but every other season of his career, he's been in the high 30s to 40s. That is another kind of, catch all, it'll save them even when they call maybe not the best play against drop. He can still hit that pull up three. And so I expect what they do to be better because you insert the better talent, but also it manipulate how the defense needs to guard you. I pulled a couple specific plays I was interested in sharing. I'll share my screen now. This is something that has been the, 12th or 3rd most used concept for the Lakers this season. They've run it 70 times, which is this, and I guess I can draw it up first before we look at the plays, but the idea of we've got a ball handler up top, we've got guys in the corners, and then what we're going to do is set this ram screen. We're going to set a screen for our eventual ball screener, with the idea being that if we can screen his man, we can give our 5 guy a little bit of a head start running up to the top of the key, so that when you run this ball screen, his defender is not in position to hedge. I want to try to force that guy into drop, and if he's going to try to recover from it, I want him sprinting all out this way, making him more vulnerable for us to drive by. And with this combination of actions, it can be really, really hard for the defense to guard it. If another element of this too, once you have the shooter under the rim, is running like an exit screen, so getting them out to the corner, which works real well if the defense is anticipating a hedge. And when you're hedging and you've got 2 guys at the level of the screen, you're going to need rotations behind it because you've got a 4v3 that the offense has created basically. And so with an exit screen, if you can take out a couple of the potential players, so we might have our roll man going downhill, but as that's happening, we've got our shooter going out to the corner. We've got a couple defenders that are kind of out of the play now. And so it's easier if you are Luka on ball to read the situation, because now you've created a 2v1 and you're reading 1 defender instead of 3 or 4. So that ram step up ball screen with the exit attached to it, to me, can help you force drop, which is bad for the defense against a pull-up shooter. The exit screen, if they are able to hedge successfully, can kind of break the back end rotations. And then the other option that the defense might try to do is switch this. And if they're trying to switch a step up ball screen, especially with a roll man like Mark Williams, you are going to see a lot of him rolling to the rim with a point guard defender behind him. So he's in between that man and the basket. And then as this is happening, again, you got the exit screen taking a couple guys out. You're going to have some good opportunities to hit that roll. So that nice inside seal, it might be an immediate dunk. It might be a post pin and then you lob it in. And so I've grabbed 3 specific clips to kind of showcase what we're looking at here. All right, maybe I can just slowly move it. This isn't actually playing, but so you got that ram for AD. He comes up to set the screen, and his man, Nurkic, he's not able to be at the level of the screen. Right now, this is going to be a Luka pull-up. And so the solution for a lot of defenses will to be having Nurkic sprint full speed out to the 3-point line, which creates opportunities for Luka to drive by, or here in this play, LeBron to drive by. And then also with this exit screen, we've got a couple defenders on the weak side that aren't going to be in position to take away a potential roll. So here we see LeBron shoot the pull up. It doesn't go in, but that's the kind of shot that you want to create for Luka Doncic. Here, same idea. Austin Reeves screening for AD. We don't actually get the separation we're looking for. Defense tries to go under, though, and so LeBron's able to get a shot off. Again, with Luka, those are going to be good looks. And then on the third play, Rui setting that step-up screen, he gets the inside position on his new defender with the defense switching. And because of the exit screen, the help defense isn't quite where they want to be, and he's able to finish at the rim for a nice, easy layup. So that's the general idea. You're trying to minimize what kinds of coverages the other team can play, and you kind of have built-in options if you're facing drop with the pull-up, switching with the inside seal, and then hedging with that exit screen to put yourself in good positions to succeed. This is something that, like, if you're going to run it with a high school team, I don't know that they're going to be able to make all those reads. Perhaps it's going to take a lot of reps, but when you've got Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves out there, and Mark Williams is a smart player as well, I think you're going to be able to have these guys that JJ Redick referred to as supercomputers like a day or two ago, make the right reads, put the ball in the right situations, and really compromise the defense.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it just opens up so many options that you laid out there with, the Ram to go, or the Ram Spain screen, I should say, to create that little bit of extra space, and the exit screen combined with it to open up the shooter and also keep the help defense at bay. I mean, I feel like Luka and LeBron are the type of cerebral players that will be able to stay one step ahead, and once they recognize the coverage, like having all those options within like the same type of set could really be special to watch, because it's like they're playing chess and they start 2 moves ahead every time. So they have all these options in their bag. So appreciate you breaking down that set there. And was there kind of any other expectations you had for the Lakers this season? And obviously they have one of the best offensive engines for the foreseeable future entering his prime. They just got him a role man on the same timeline that when he's healthy is really talented. So they have a pretty good core just from the 2 new additions, let alone Reeves and Rui and however many years LeBron has left, which who knows? He'll just play until he feels like, basically, at this point. So in terms of this season, though, the Lakers are pretty high seed right now in the West, and I don't think they're just going to roll over, especially if Luka's like healthy, ready to go, let alone motivated with everything that just happened. They're the 5 seed in a tough conference. They've got a little, couple 2-3 games ahead of basically the 7th through 11th seed. They're 12th in point differential, 11th in offense, 14th in defense. So, we'll see how that defense looks the rest of the way, but the offense could really be special this year. Do you think they have an outside chance, or at least a puncher's chance, to win it all right away after this deal?
I think they have a puncher's chance. I guess I will have to wait and see how quickly they're able to gel as a group. I wouldn't completely write the season off. They still have 30-ish games to get it together. They actually played fewer games than I think every other team, or just about every other team, because they had the fire situation in LA. So they have a little bit more of a packed schedule coming up, but plenty of opportunity to build chemistry, get on the same page. I think they have, with the Williams trade, they now have a center that they needed. If they didn't make that move, you're looking at Jackson Hayes starting at center and then small ball backups. And that, to me, wasn't going to go well. But adding in Williams, you now have a starting center, a backup center, and you've got 2 elite offensive engines. I think you've got enough spacing. You've got your lob threats. And so you have a lot of the right pieces. What the scheme looks like, I think, will be important. We've seen the success of the Lakers half-court offense be very up and down and based on how often they're calling plays and if they're, winning that rock, paper, scissors battle or not. And there have been games where they've been really good at it and the offense has been explosive. There have been other games where they've not seemed to care, and all of a sudden it looks like they're running in mud, and people end up blaming the players, but the coaching side of it too does matter. And so if they can continue to raise their game, I think that will be an important part of this team hitting its ceiling. I have seen defensively a lot of technique improvements and tactical improvements that if you would have asked me this question like a month ago, I would have said no chance. Like the defense isn't anywhere close to being ready to compete, and that was with Anthony Davis on the squad. You are now a worse defensive team after these trades, but I think they might have a chance with some of what they've figured out. I am still skeptical. I think they're going to have to go out and prove it. The good news is they are like tied in the loss column with the 3 seed. They just haven't played as many games as Denver or Houston. And I think if you were to start with this group and be like the 10 seed, you'd still feel kind of bullish about their ability to rise up in the standings. The fact that they're starting as the 5 and really only a game and a half back on the 3 seed makes me feel pretty good about their chances of, I don't know, at least improving this record, putting themselves into a favorable position. And then I've seen Luka do more with less. I was I had a season ticket package in Dallas a couple seasons ago, his rookie year, and I've seen that dude do incredible things. We saw what he was able to do last season in the playoffs, pulling that Dallas squad to the finals. I don't know if this Lakers group is as talented or as well coached or as good, but I don't know. I cannot count this group out with how loaded they are on the top end and the sorts of improvements that seem to be happening real time with the coaching, both defensively and offensively from a scheme standpoint.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com. A rookie Luka, just special.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. Rookie Luka. At the same time, we also had Dirk in his final season, who was laboring out there. But it was fun to watch them play together. Some fun memories and really, really exciting games. So yeah, he's just gotten better and better. And I'm excited that Lakers fans can get to enjoy Luka the way that I have been able to in person in the past.
Yeah, it's a special time to be a Lakers fan for sure. And yeah, I mean, I agree that the defense is the big question mark for this season. I imagine they'll be able to shore it up a little bit in the offseason. They have a handful of good individual defenders. We'll just see, like you said, like a lot of change for the coaching staff, a new coaching staff to begin with, and a lot of change overnight where they got to come up with new things and find what works for this personnel. Because obviously, there's what works in theory and then what actually works on the court. And, it's one thing to figure out what generally works for the rest of the season versus like actually game planning for a playoff team over the course of a series and maybe coming up with new concepts that work specifically for those series. But obviously adding Dorian Finney-Smith, Luka's friend, like lockdown defender that I think should probably start next to these offensive guys or offensive creators. And, Rui Hachimura has been really impressive just on both ends defensively, can score a little bit. And, you added Markieff Morris, Maxi Kleber. Still, let's see if Gabe Vincent kind of has any resurgence, I suppose. I know he hasn't been too great since leaving Miami, but he's interesting at least for the depth. And Jared Vanderbilt's been impressive. And, Austin Reeves as well, obviously, is probably, third in command in that. So, I mean, and it's an interesting idea, too, that this could be the type of team that has such high processing offensive creators that the offense is so consistently great that, maybe they just won't necessarily need as much defense until later playoff rounds. And, if there's a team that can win off offense, it's a team that has a Luka and a LeBron, let alone, everyone else we just mentioned. So, I would say I want to say like every champion since Shaq and Kobe has a top 12 defense and top 12 offense. It's normally the go-to stat I use for like looking at contenders, seeing if they rate at least around that area or better. Because obviously like 12 through 18, the defensive and offensive ratings can kind of get pretty close. Like there isn't a marginally much difference unless you're, really top 10 or even top 5 most of the time. But, this is going to be one special offense. I can't wait to kind of dive into it. And, one other general question I would have about kind of your view on scouting and understanding the game. Like how do you value watching the film versus using the analytics? What's your process like? Is there a specific order that you use where if you're scouting a player, you're going to watch the film and then look up the stats, or maybe you just see something in the stats that makes you want to watch the film? Like how do you view both of them as tools for scouting to kind of paint the big picture?
Yeah, it's a really good question and one that I see very strong opinions on in both ways. My perspective is information's information, and I want more information. I use data resources that I trust. You know, part of it is being on the back end, knowing how they're created, knowing what goes into it. Part of it is finding clips that correspond with what I'm looking at and making sure it lines up. But for me, it's about as much information as I can get. And I think humility is part of the process, understanding that like, yeah, I trust my eye test. I've been trained like in a film room for a team. I know how to scout, I know how to break down plays and player skill sets and things like that. But I know that I can watch the past 5 Mark Williams games and have my takeaways from that. And that is absolutely not a representative sample of what he's done on the full season. Tune into a random NBA game on any given night, you're not going to see every player's like median performance. You are going to see some guys have a good night, some guys have a bad night, and just naturally there are going to be certain players that over time, if you are random enough with your watching, you are going to just happen to have seen a better collection of games or a worse collection of games for them than what is reality. So like for me on the Lakers side, I've watched every game, I've rewatched every game. I log every single offensive possession that they have in the half court. I've logged over, I think, 22,000 plays over the past 3 or 4 seasons. So I can tell you with certainty what is happening and what's good and what's bad. But I absolutely know I can't tell you with certainty what it looks like for other teams. And so that's where if I can lean on data when I'm scouting, let's say, from my perspective, scouting an opponent for the Lakers in the playoffs, I can lean on my data to know what their style of play is, what they're good at, what they're bad at. And then from there, to me, where the film is really valuable is seeing how they do what they do, what sets are they running, what concepts do they use, and being familiar with how the Lakers like to defend in past years. I'd say, okay, well, if they're going to run double drag, here's how LA will defend it. Now I need to go find film on how that team has attacked the specific tactic the Lakers have used. And you can kind of work your way down this flow chart of the like chess match and figure out, okay, where will one of the teams be checkmated? Where does one of the teams have something to throw at the other that they've never seen before? How do their styles match up? I know defending Nikola Jokic looks like a tremendous feat, and it is a tremendous feat, and it's so hard to do. There have been certain types of post help that Denver crushes, and then other types of post help that they don't have a good plan for. And the teams that have success against Jokic do certain things, and they're different from what other teams do. And we saw, that's the kind of scouting to me that is really important, is finding the small nuances within the chess game to figure out where those, where you can exploit another team. I have not been in the shoes to like go scout a high school kid or a college kid and tell you here's how good he's going to be in a couple seasons. But scouting a player like a Mark Williams or a Luka Doncic, looking at the data for what do they do, how frequently do they do it, what is Mark Williams? I know he's only turning over his left shoulder and hitting right-handed hook shots from the post. So that's something I can go watch the film on, and but that's useful information. Figuring out the how and the why is where the film comes in handy. And I can tell you, from looking at Mark Williams' film, he's got a lot to clean up from a technique standpoint with his screening, and like defensively, his hit fluidity is impacting his interior defensive data and how he defends and drop. And it's those little nuances that are the actionable insights to help you figure out how to coach a guy differently, deploy a guy differently, decide whether he fits or not, decide whether you have an advantage over an opponent or not. And so all information is good information. And as long as you can trust certain data, use it as a shortcut and don't assume that the small little bit of film that you've watched that might be the equivalent of like the first minute of a 48-minute game, don't trust that to be the truth. It was true for that little sample, but it's not representative. And I think that is the biggest issue I see with people, is assuming that what they've seen is the way the players play all the time. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, it's a great perspective to have on all those tools and information, and just like hitting that Sam Hinkie quote, like every game is a data point. And you took the words right out of my mouth, that the stats are the what happened, and the film can be the how or the why it happened. And I think that last point gets under noticed by especially the casual fans, but really just a lot of people, that one game is not the player, and that basketball is a very like volatile, sporadic result sport between 3 point shooting, between night to night production. Like the superstars are considered these superstar franchise cornerstones for a reason because they can be great on a night to night basis. Like there's only one Shea because there's no one else putting up 28, 7, 4, and 3 almost every single night. Like it's just another day on the park. And same with LeBron as well. Like that, being consistently great is what separates these superstars from the regular all star that might put up good stats or and might not win as many games or have nice highlights, but doesn't produce winning impact. So I think that part gets unnoticed a little bit by just general basketball conversations. And it's good to point out. And one last question to follow up a little bit. I was just kind of curious when you're say logging a game, a Lakers game, or if it's not scouting a prospect that on the way up, then it's scouting a trade target like Mark Williams. What are you looking for in the film watch? What are you logging? Are you logging his like I'll let you answer. What are you logging when you're watching a team or watching a player? Like what are you specifically writing down or looking for to say, okay, he's good at this, or this is what happened?
Yeah, so on the Lakers offense, I guess I'll give you three answers. For the Lakers offense, each play I am looking at, did they run a play or were they freelancing? What alignment did they use? Is it 5 out, 4 out, 1 in, horns, what have you? If they ran a play, which play was it? And then if it's a pick and roll or a dribble handoff play, what coverage did they face? Did the defense drop and go over the screen? Did they ice and, soft hedge? Like what's going on there? And then I'll mark down if the set play that they ran resulted in the scoring chance, yes or no. I'll write down who got the scoring chance, what play type it was. So a spot up or a pick and roll or a post up or a putback or a cut. If someone had a potential assist. So even if I pass you the ball and you miss it, if I directly set up your shot, I'm going to mark down that, Tim created the potential assist, and then I'll write down the results. I will mark down if the shot was open, lightly contested, or heavily contested, which is something that just over the course of the season, I know my eye test and I know it's going to be consistent. If I had 30 Tims doing 30 teams, I'd worry about the consistency game to game, person to person, which is why having camera tracking is really helpful, but I don't. And so that's why I am just making sure it's me every game. And from those inputs, I then have a lot of back end math that goes on. I have a playbook tab where every time the team runs a new play, I will write down what it is, what alignment it's out of, if it's part of a series of plays. Like, for example, the Lakers have a number of delay plays where they're 5 out, pass the ball to the big man at the top of the key, and then there are different things that happen out of it. I will keep those in that same family, that same group of plays, which I call a series. And then I'll mark down, based on which concept it is, which coverages should this attack well. If it's a double drag, I know, or a delay Chicago, I know that double screening action works real well against soft hedging and hard hedging. And so I will check those boxes. I will leave the drop coverage box unchecked. And then when I go back and I log the games and I say they ran double drag against drop, it's going to show up as like, a big, somewhere saying, this was not a good coverage fit. And so from all of what I've done, I've been able to help quantify for myself what works against what, which conceptually I know what I think should work, but being able to have the reinforcement and knowing just how much better certain things are against certain coverages is helpful. I can tell you, how the team's 5 out usage and horns usage shifts over time. I could tell you when the Lakers play 2 bigs, how did they play differently than with just 1 big or no bigs. And I also calculate an expected points per possession based on the openness of shots, the location of shots, if it's self-created or set up by a teammate. And so from all of that, I can get a better feel for, was the process of the team good, or were they just hitting really tough shots? We've seen some games recently where the Lakers took bad shots but hit them at really good rates, and it feels good as a fan. But from an analyst standpoint, I want to be able to say, this wasn't great. Here's what we need to tweak. And so from all of this, I have a database of KPIs, key performance indicators, where I look at the percentage of the Lakers offense that's organized, the percentage of the time they attack coverages correctly, the percentage of the time their post-ups or isolations facing help are countered. They're running help beaters is what I call them. and then the caliber of sets as well. I have a methodology to quantify, just for any team, any play, how good is that player? How good should that play be? So that's what I do there. Before I talk about like scouting opponents or scouting individual players, any questions or follow ups related to the team logging? Because it's a lot of work, but you get a ton of insight from it.
No, I mean that really answered the question. It was a super interesting breakdown because I'll do some logging either more so I do it scouting like high school prospects or a possible draft prospect, and if I'm going to a game live to scout a guy, I will kind of record basically anytime I see a winning play or a skill that I think will translate to essentially any level, but especially the next level, whether it's a defensive instinct play or like you mentioned, the potential assist that didn't actually go in, but he clearly broke down the defense and found the open man, like he made a good decision. That's worth making a quick note of. That might not, definitely won't show up in a high school box score, but at the very least, that sort of stuff and anything that you especially get being there live, like maybe a reaction from teammates or how they treat their teammates or lift them up or maybe not lift them up. So that stuff's I feel like an important part of when you're actually at the game. That's something that you can take away that others might not see or be able to if they're not there as well. And that's where I think some value is for that. So that was partially why I was wondering. And
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I can see how also like it's a lot of work and probably a very useful, let's say database to go back to, like you said, for a potential playoff series or where, you think you're going to see a lot of a certain coverage and you've seen how the Lakers respond to it, 50 or even 100 or a couple hundred times already this season, all the different defensive schemes they've gone up against with these plays and alignments and kind of have something in mind of like, all right, this should work against that. So how, where, who's going to make the counter move that, runs out of counter moves at the end?
Yep.
Like how many counter moves are left here where like they can actually stop this, and this. So it's definitely interesting to hear your process.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for today, for prepping for this pod, I in like 4 minutes was able to pull together video clips from games like 250 and 75 of the season that I shared on the screen earlier. And I knew where exactly to grab those clips because I tracked that as well. So I knew, all right, I want to look for when they ran the Ram step exit play against drop coverage. Okay, game 2 of the season, third quarter, 2 minutes in or something like that. So it makes it really easy for me later on to go grab and compile clips. And yeah, it's super useful. Again, it's a ton of work. If anyone is ever interested in trying to do this for their own team, feel free to reach out. I have a template I've shared with college coaches, NBA coaches, high school coaches, and it's super useful. Takes a lot of work, but you can get a lot out of it. And so that's what it looks like on that side. On like the team scouting side, like I pulled up, I have a 20-page Kings playoff scouting report that I put together from 2022-23 in a season the Lakers didn't play the Kings in the playoffs, but they were one of 2 teams the Lakers might have played based on what round they got to. And so I scouted both the Warriors and the Kings. And in there, it's a lot of who are they, what do they want to do, what are their major play types, who are they going to, and then where you really use the film work is understanding like, okay, the De'Aaron Fox pick and roll, Kevin Huerter dribble handoffs, and Sabonis post ups. Like that's what we're going to focus on because those are more of their offensive engines that end up creating the spot ups and the cuts and whatnot. And that's where digging into how do they do against certain coverages? How does their skill set factor into that? How does the team scheme factor into that? And from that, you can put together a decent look at, this is probably what'll end up happening with those moves and counter moves like you talked about earlier. So it's stuff that, I find useful and we use for like our podcast over at the Lakers Exceptionalism pod. We've been consulted by teams in the NBA playoffs to basically deliver this stuff to them to help them figure out how to beat certain opponents. And to me, that's a bunch of fun, like impacting what I'm seeing on TV. And so it's a fun exercise. I feel like I get a little bit better at it every single time. Again, it's a lot of work, but I'm not going to do something unless I'm going to do it thoroughly. And that's, I guess, just how it's materialized over the years.
Yeah, and so, are you crossing enemy lines there a little bit? Are you helping out the opponent and figure out, the team that you're spending so much time covering?
So I'm not gonna help if you want to reach out and say, "Hey Tim, I want to beat the Lakers." I'm not gonna help you. um, I would be happy to put together a scouting report on a different team.
Yeah.
Um, Although I will say for the premium tiers in my Discord, certain folks in there get access to the tracker spreadsheet. So I
Mm,
guess if you want to shell out $50 a month or something, you can figure out every play the Lakers ran all season. So
there you
that's
go.
also available.
You gotta get some subscribers from the Western Conference playoff teams about to hit subscribe.
Yeah,
Well,
and the thing is, if the Lakers reached out and said, "Hey, please stop," I'd be open to that. I might put a price tag with it, but I'd be open to that. I've, in the contact I've had with them, there has never been a "Hey, please stop," and so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, you might have to hire him first, but he'll listen. He'll be willing to listen. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It was super interesting to dive into your thought process, scouting, understanding the game, breaking down film, and check out the Lakers Exceptionalism pod with Cranjik. I always mispronounce it. It's a mouthful sometimes. Cranjis McBasketball and Tom Zayas, aka Tim NBA on Twitter or X, Tim underscore NBA to be specific, is where you can find him. And, check out the BBall Index. Ton of interesting tools there. And yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on, talk some Lakers, and congrats. The rest of the NBA is very jealous that the Lakers just pulled off another heist here.
Yeah, I don't. Me too. I'm still in shock. We'll try to enjoy it the rest of the season. We'll see how it goes. But thanks, Ryan, for having me. Thanks everyone for listening. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about anything I talked about today. I know I get super in the weeds, and so if something's new, something's different, you disagree with something, feel free to let me hear it, and I'm happy to chat.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time and always down to talk hoops. Do it again sometime. But have a good one.
Thanks. You too.